ministerial programs for women, generating data bank information centers on women programs, providing technical assistance to women groups, identifying the needs and promoting the activities, the economic activities of women, both in the rural and urban areas. Also, initiating and sustaining income-generating programs, amongst others. A brief history of the ministry. The Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation started off as a Department of Women and Children in the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Social Welfare. It was later upgraded to a bureau under the Governor's Office. It later became a Women Commission by Decree 42 of 1992, and eventually became a full-fledged ministry by virtue of Lagos State Official Gazette number 7, volume 34 of 2001. I'm not going to bore you too much on that. According to the UN Secretary General, climate change affects every aspect of society, from the health of the global economy to the health of our children. It is about the water in our wells and in our taps. It is about the food on our table, and at the core of nearly all the major challenges we face today. Now, what are the visible evidence on climate change impacts? The first is this rise in the sea level. Lagos is located on the coast and comprises numerous islands. Owing to the excessive groundwater extraction, the incoming challenges of sea level rise have been magnified. Also, we have the abnormal weather patterns and seasonal variations, flooding and coastal erosion, food security, and so on. The rise in the sea level and high urban flooding. As one of the coastal megacities in Africa, Lagos serves as an important port for commercial activities, built around the Lagos Lagoon. It opens on the Atlantic Ocean and comprises of a piece of the mainland and an ensemble of low-lying islands. The geography of the city makes it susceptible to coastal flooding and saltwater intrusion, especially considering that most of its upscale neighborhoods and business centers are built on the island. The issue of climate change cannot be addressed in solace, but has to be integrated with the overall development plan to ensure sustainable and inclusive rural development. When we talk about the rise in the sea level, you will agree with me that most of the people that are affected and that are most impacted on are the people that live around the coastal line, and these are the rural people. And when such things happen, the rural women are the worst hit. Also, when you talk about the flash flooding, the flash flooding is when there is heavy rainfall, which can cause flooding in almost any landscape. Cities are particularly vulnerable in flash flooding. In every rainfall, drainage systems can become overwhelmed, and without soft landscapes allowing the water to drain away, within seconds, hard surfaces can flood. The risk of flash flooding in cities has increased in recent years as more extreme rainfall has coincided with the expansion of concrete and paved surfaces, leaving fewer opportunities for water to drain away naturally. When you have such floods, the women in the rural areas are the worst hit, and they are the ones that feel the impact the most. There is also the increase in temperature of the lower atmosphere. When there is increase in temperature of the lower atmosphere, it affects even the fish in the sea. Because the water is hot, they try to run deeper to get a cooler level in the sea. And that affects people, the fishermen that go to fish. It affects their fish, it affects the food security of the people that live in the rural area. Also, there is the issue of high humidity. When the temperature is high, the vapor in the air is also very high, and that affects the green gas effect in the area. A warmer atmosphere generally contains more water vapor. Water vapor is a potent greenhouse gas, thus causing more warming. Its short lifetime in the atmosphere keeps its increase largely in steps with warming. Thus, water vapor is heated as an amplifier and not a driver of climate change. Most of us that live in the urban areas, when the weather is hot, we all run into our homes, into our offices, and we put on our air conditioners. The women in the rural areas do not have that privilege and such luxury. What happens to them? They use their hand fans to fan themselves and also their children. And they go through what we call the heat shocks. Now, reduced water availability. When the weather is hot, when there's drought, the wells are dry, the ponds are dry, the lakes are dry. It is the women in the rural area that go around to look for water. They're the ones that go around to find water for their family. I'm sure we all agree that there is no way we can survive without the availability of water. And also when there's flooding, most of the children, most of the girls, especially the girl child, drop out of school because they need to salvage whatever is left of the properties of their parents. Also the windstorm. When there's heavy windstorm, it affects the roofs of their properties. You know, most of them live in thatched houses, and when there is heavy windstorm, the kind of structures they have cannot withstand such storm. How does climate change affect women in Lagos State? I've talked about some of them. Women make up a large percentage of the over 5 million inhabitants living in informal settlements in Lagos that are highly dependent on natural resources that are affected by climate change for their livelihoods. When there is heavy flooding, it affects their farms. And when there is heat and high temperature in the atmosphere, it affects their food production also. So women in the rural area are most affected by climate change. Women's limited access to resources and decision-making process increases their vulnerability to climate change. Women in most settlements are responsible for household water supply and energy for cooking, and both are vulnerable to climate change-related droughts and desertification, respectively. It is the women in the rural areas that go around to fetch firewoods. They are the ones that cook with those firewoods, and it affects them. They are the ones that do not have the luxury of the gas that we use in the urban areas. They are the ones who will have to go miles to fetch water for their families. They are the ones who will need to fan themselves, make sure that their children are well protected against cold in extreme cases and against heat also in extreme cases. Women, due to their social roles, are affected differently by the effects of climate change and by extreme climate events that often translate into disasters. Strategies for addressing climate change by WAPA. The Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation has done several public awareness creation and sensitization programs, one of which the GM Lasepa was invited during the International Day for the Rural Women to speak to rural women on the effects of climate change, the mitigation and the adaptation in rural areas in Lagos State. Also, we realize that women need to be empowered. A lot of women in the rural areas depend only on natural resources. They depend only on their farm produce. They depend only on what they are able to get around their neighborhood. So we as a ministry have gone a step further to go to most of these areas to teach them skills that could improve on what they have available to them. There's provision of access to energy-efficient technologies, collaboration and partnership with relevant MDAs and organizations on climate change activities. These are pictures of the empowerment program with the more energy-efficient cooking gas cylinders. We went to some of the rural areas. We taught them catering, and then we taught them how to use the energy-efficient cooking gases instead of burning of biofuels and fossils. Also, we've had programs teaching people on waste disposal. If you look at the second picture, you will see the Loma disposal bags for proper disposal of refuse. We have also gone to empowerment. Just this morning, 1,000 women were given empowerment materials through the Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. And we insisted on most of those women coming from the rural areas. Some time ago, the governor visited Orimedu community in Ibejuleki. He promised them empowerment materials, and they were part of the beneficiaries of today's empowerment program done by the Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Also, in our Avia farm in Badagry, we have empowered about 1,500 women on various trainings on cassava, how to process gari, maize production. We didn't just teach them how to farm, because most of them know how to farm anyway, but we went ahead to give them portions of land that they can use for the farming for 10 months each. If you look at the second picture, you will see a palliative given to women in the rural areas during the COVID-19 pandemic. We went to rural areas, we went to islands across the sea to give palliatives to women living in the rural areas, because we knew that they felt the impact of the pandemic even more than the people in the urban areas. And you can also see cylinders, cookers, and what have you. We've gone ahead not just to give them that, but also to let them know that the woman that fries akara by the roadside does not need to use firewood anymore. She does not need to use those tripod stands anymore, but they can use these small gas cylinders and they will still be able to achieve whatever they need to achieve. Gone are the days when all these Agoyin women would have to look for firewood to make their Agoyin jollof rice. These days, they have industrial cookers that they can use. I would like to crack this joke before I continue. I've been part of this climate change summit since inception, but as a local G. Then I was in the local government, and I was very passionate about this program. And every year I came, I was always fighting the organizers. And what was there? What was the issue there? All the technicalities, all the big grammars. I always ask them, if we go back to local government, how do you expect us to tell them about all of this? You need to come to our level. But here I am today, also here, speaking about climate change. And I told the peers this afternoon, I said, for me, what we need to talk about is to teach our women how not to leave the lights on when it's not necessary. To teach them how not to wash clothes every day with detergent. To teach them to lock the tap properly so that water will not just be dropping off the taps. These are issues that we need to understand and we need to know. And also, what I learned in the past is the fact that when people are doing birthdays or celebrating anything, you don't have to buy expensive gifts. Give them a pot of flower. Give them a plant. It will do them a world of good, rather than wasting money on perfumes and all sorts. These are the things that I have learned in the past, and I'm still holding on to them. Also, we've had mainstreaming climate resilience in women entrepreneurial training. We realized that, yes, we have 19 skills acquisition centers spread around the 5 regions of Lagos. We actually also have in some islands. We have in Ilashe. Ilashe is an island. The one in Ibeshe Island is almost completed. We have in various local, rural areas. But we realized that, yes, it's one thing to teach them we teach them different skills, but also how do they run such businesses. So we had entrepreneurship training for women. And you can also see the distribution of freezers and cookers. And the third picture is the graduates from our catering training for women in the rural areas. We have 2 types of training, by the way. We have the long-term training, which is for 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year. And we have our short-term training, which is just for 4 weeks. Those are the ones that we take to the rural areas. We go in there, we teach them for 4 weeks on different skills, and then we move on. Also, I would like to mention that over 5,780 women have benefited from our empowerment program. Okay, plus the 1,000 of today, 6,000 actually, 780, and about 7,000 have benefited from the short-term skills training. Concluding message. For us as the Ministry for Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, climate change is real, and its impacts are here with us in Lagos. Women are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Women are the first responders when extreme weather events occur in homes. Women are vulnerable to all forms of gender and sexual-based violence during the effects of climate change. You can imagine when they're in refugee camps, they are vulnerable to all sorts of abuse, violence. Women are the receiving end of climate change-related disasters. Women make the home front resilient. If the climate change war must be won, women must be empowered to be at the forefront. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for the Honorable Commissioner, Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, for that rich tick-off for all of us to speak from. We appreciate you. Another round of applause for her, please. Thank you. On this note, I'll ask a professor, because we don't want it to be extinct, to take...
No, I'm not the one, no.
Is he?
I'm for infrastructure. Interdependency.
Okay, so maybe we can take questions. We just take... No discussions, okay. Okay, there's somebody online. Can we take the person online? Sorry. Okay, then. So are you talking about interdependency after the online? She's also talking on interdependency. Okay. Please, can we hear Paul? Okay. So, Paul, please can we have you?
Great. I just want to confirm if you're able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. And distinguished guests, and I'd like to acknowledge the existing protocol and obviously the Honourable Commissioner for Environment and Home Secretary for hosting this fantastic event. And acknowledging previously people, the Honourable Commissioner for Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. And distinguished panelists and guests, it's a great pleasure to be able to speak to you this evening and to congratulate the City of Lagos, or the State of Lagos, for publishing the Climate Action Plan. It's been a long journey, and I think it's a fantastic milestone for the journey of climate action planning within the State of Lagos. I'm here to present to you on interdependencies, and it is a very tough act to follow as Honourable Commissioner, and a very empowering key for how do I hope that you are all able to see the presentation. I'm sure I'll get a message somewhere if you are unable to see it, but I'll continue. So I think, building on the impacts of climate change, and when we talk around climate change, and particularly, obviously the important aspect of equity and thinking around vulnerable communities within the context of climate change. There is also trying to understand what is the interdependencies and understanding exactly how, when we talk around the impacts of climate change, what exactly is impacted, who is impacted, how are they impacted. And this is what the notion of interdependency is. It's about that cause and effect. What happens when we have a driver, such as a flood? What impact does that flood have to perhaps infrastructure? And what is the consequence of that to livelihoods? And understanding these cause and effect pathways, these interdependencies, is really crucial to understanding how do we have a more resilient and prosperous system. And I think particularly when we start to unpack that with understanding who is vulnerable, which communities are vulnerable, who within those communities is vulnerable. But I'm going to take a quick step back and sort of have a look at a macro landscape, because when we talk around climate change risk, when we talk around the interdependency of climate change and what that impact is, it's also important to have a little of a global perspective. And I think what's really interesting is every year the World Economic Forum produces this global risk outlook, where they start to look at the impact and likelihood of critical things within global and global geopolitics. And every year for the last 5 years, climate action has come out as number one. But if we don't respond and understand how to
Thank you very much, Paul Jorgensen, the C40 Head of Climate Action Planning, for a well-thought-out paper on interdependency, understanding the infrastructure. For that, we'll have Mrs. Sholakwe Hammond, Professor Oladipo Emmanuel, and Professor Ahove discussing what our brother has just spoken to us about. For the HC, the questions that was sent here, she has already addressed them. Because of time, we will not go over the questions again. So I'll yield the floor to Professor Emmanuel Oladipo to talk on the interdependency. Thank you, sir. A round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really pleased, and I really want to thank you for this organization that I think is perhaps too unique. The way we have been doing it before, this is a new dimension, and I'm really very grateful that I witnessed this one. Thank you very much. I'm not going to be talking about the paper. I use the paper to derive certain things. That is because this topic in particular is rarely discussed. And I was very impressed when I saw it. It raises the issue that we are dealing with a fairly complex issue that requires all of us to be involved, which means there's no one-way-fit-all solution. What I have therefore done is to put down 11 statements, which I hope I will quickly read, just 11 sentences, which should address some of the things that we should be thinking about, even when this summit is over. The challenges of adapting any development sector to climate change is complex, with rapidly changing socioeconomic conditions and competing priorities. I want people to know that, because everybody will talk about government. Competing priorities for any development. Government has a competing priority. It's COVID priority now. When you start talking about climate change and everything, people will be asking questions. What is this one? So we have to recognize that complexity. The second thing I want us to take from this summit is that recognition of this complexity requires that we overcome any barriers and encounters of various challenges and cross-pathings. The various sectors, they cross-path each other with other non-climatic challenges that are shaped by both our socio-economic or cultural factors as well as the physical features. A lot of things are being said here during this summit that tend to just put every blame on climate change. It is not true. Let us remember that climate is part of us. There's nothing, I keep on repeating this, there's nothing we can do to stop climate change. There's nothing, it's part of the system. But we can do a lot to try to adapt to it to make sure it does not wash us away. That's the maximum we can do. We'll be talking about climate change till we all pass away, and to the next generation, because it has been changing in the past, and it continues to change till God says He's no longer interested in the earth and carries all of us away. The third thing I want us to take from here is that these additional challenges, which are in some instances non-climatic, make it very difficult to translate awareness of the changing climate into tangible adaptation, and it illustrates that awareness of the climate change does not necessarily translate into practicing adaptation. So we need to really come up, and I'm very happy with I will end with that one later, that your climate change action plan plus this resilience strategy should be merged properly to make sure that you have concrete actions that can be used. The next thing that this one does is that apart from awareness to acceptance of adaptation planning and implementation is a very long one. Please, let's be patient. Don't do ad hoc interventions that may even create more problem in the process of. Let's think things through very well. Remember that adaptation is a very slow process. It's a long-term process that is not one thing that you can do in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, but you can continuously be improving upon it. It is also very critical for us to note that the occurrence, emergence, and persistence of adaptation barriers are factored by socioeconomic and cultural factors that are very dynamic. In all these discussions I've been having over the years, all of us have been scared to talk about population. While climate change may not be directly related to population, it will definitely have effect. The population factor will definitely have effect. No matter what you want to do, as long as the population of Lagos State continues to increase, this non-climatic factor will be obliterating and making your adaptation measures not to be as effective as you think it to be. I used my in-laws' house in the VI here that was built in 1977, where you can count the number of houses in VI. Today, I was shocked. I haven't been to Victoria now for about 5 years. I was shocked, and I cannot see what we can do that we, as long as those massive buildings continue to emanate from this, that they will not be obliterating the impact of climate change as long as we continue to grow in population. We also need to understand that adaptation to climate change in any sector has to be taken into account these various socioeconomic and cultural factors. Adaptation barriers due to normative behaviors and indifferent attitudes must be recognized. Otherwise, we end up having what we call nothing can be done. If we are not very careful, we say, what can we do? Nothing more than we can do. Awareness raising of potential climate change risks should be accompanied by including and building human capacity and allocating financial resources and institutional organizational structure that can help to improve in the implementation of these adaptation strategies. Policy paralysis can occur both due to the unavailability of scientific knowledge as well as the inability of the demand side, that is the people, to have access to appropriate and available knowledge. Another thing that is very important as we move forward is to recognize the following, which is very common in many government institutions. Power struggles between different agencies and institutions over the sharing and distribution of responsibilities and financial resources remain a major challenge and should be properly monitored and done very well so that we can, with our little resources, we concentrate and make the structures of the institution that will be helping us to do this thing very simple so that we do not continue to be doing things. This is a problem of many of the institutions. Climate change does not belong to any sector. It belongs to all. Although 1 or 2 departments or ministries will be leading, but all must be properly involved. And the final thing, it is imperative for skilled staff with collaboration among relevant institutions, both at the local, the state, and even at the national level, to overcome the barriers that will make climate change adaptation very difficult for us. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, our erudite professor. We've taken in most of the things you said. They are meant for us, the government, that we should have, we should not struggle for responsibility. We've taken it that we shouldn't have policy paralysis. For sake of time, I'll take it that our rapporteurs have taken note of everything that you've said. And I'll allow Dr. Mike Ahove to lend his voice, then the essay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. from what Paul has presented, first I want to consider the global outlook for 2021 from the Economic Forum. From the slide he presented, I noticed about 32 parameters that are risk factors for the global community in the year 2021. The top 5 had risk factor at 4.0 and above. 4 of the 5 are environmentally related. 1 is in health, which is, I guess, the issue of COVID. So COVID in that data was about 4.6 of a scale of 5. And climate inaction was about 4.5. You know, when you listen to CNN or Al Jazeera, they will tell that the threat level of COVID is at 3.0 out of 5. Sometimes they'll say it's at 4.0, so it's real danger. So what that study says is this, that the threat level for the year 2021 related to climate change is the failure to act, implying that if we fold our hands and say God will take control, the danger is 4.5. And you know, when you listen to all these global news and you hear threat at 4.5, you wouldn't want to go to that country. So the implication is that the global community is in danger at 4.5 if we don't act concerning climate change. So climate inaction is the second most dangerous thing any community, any country can do for herself. So what is the implication for Lagos State? If Lagos does not act, then we are in danger. From the presentation, flood is one of the risks that Lagos State will encounter. So what should we do? What are the adaptive techniques that we can put in place? From studies have shown that flood is one challenge or a major challenge in Lagos. Erosion is a challenge, coastal flooding is a challenge, and high temperature is a challenge. So how do we adapt to this issue so that the interconnection that was discussed will be easily resolved? 1, I suggest we work primarily on our drainages, our coastal areas, our waterways. Studies have shown, if you compare Lagos with the Netherlands, you will see that we have similar topography, lowland, coastal communities. But when Netherlands has been adequately channelized, the water comes in and flows out. You heard what the grandfather of climate change said. In the 70s, where he used to go, it's very easy. I learned to ride bicycle during those years in the 70s. But today, because of urbanization, and because we have not channelized our water properly, water is not flowing out. Water needs to flow in. So we need to do that. So we need to take practical steps, clean our waterways and ensure. Number 2, finally, is that we should have a technical group from here to ensure that we identify actionable actions that we'll be able to implement so that when we come in 2022, we'll be able to say, as of 2021, this was where we were. In 2022, we're able to do this and that, and these are the results. Just like the Honorable Commissioner for Women Affairs has told us. She had experience here for years, and today she has testimony. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. I'm sure the Permanent Secretary, ODS, Office of Drainage Services, have taken note of what you said about waterways, coastal areas, drainages, channelization. And then we've also taken note of your advice that we should continue with the technical. So that has been taken, and we'll hear that in the communique very soon. Just to save time, I'll move quickly to SA, Sustainable Development and Investment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for staying with us. It's been a very exciting 2 days, and it's a real pleasure to be here today. And thank you very much to the Ministry of Environment family for inviting me. Very excited to also be speaking about interdependencies, and I think all the prior speakers have really nailed it. Very often, and I like to think of climate change a bit like the Matrix. When you see it, you see it. You know, there are many things that we do, individual actions that we take, and we don't think about the repercussions. But they have ripple effects, and there really are these interdependencies, as has been so eloquently laid out for us by Paul Jørgensen. For me, the evidence, we see it in the huge waste management problem that we have in the state and are battling to address air quality issues. Again, as Doctor has said here, the issue around flooding and our water channels, all of that interplay together to create the problem for us in conjunction with obviously what's going on across the globe, the risks to all cities in the world, especially low-lying cities like Lagos, from rising temperatures, melting permafrost, and all the other things that are threatening low-lying cities such as Lagos. And for me, the framework to look at obviously will be the Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, I have a bias. And you know, one of the key things we look at there is flooding. So we look at Goal 13, which is where we deal with climate change, and we look at the impact of flooding, which hasn't been as bad in Lagos in terms of number of deaths, but has obviously had a lot of impact on our people in terms of destruction of property, even affecting the way we do business and our ability to move around. We're again in rainy season, and I'm encouraging everyone to sort of look around. I keep a very good eye on what's going on with regards to flooding and reporting any areas where they're flooding, because Lagos is doing a lot with regards to clearing and I think we must commend the Office of Drainage Services. Actually, they're doing a fantastic job. For us in Banana Island, I know you still see the flash flooding when it's raining because it's very heavy, but it drains away. And that road hasn't been that way for the past 3-4 years, so I really must commend them on the great work they're doing. So I think I'll just skip. I mean, we can talk about all the goals. There are 5 goals, 5 targets under this. One is around making sure that there's a framework. We strengthen resilience and capacity, which is really what we're doing around here. Lagos not only has a resilience plan that looks at climate change, but we have just yesterday launched the Climate Action Plan, which Mr. Governor launched yesterday, which was developed by the Ministry of Environment. So Lagos is already well ahead with regards to that. We also look at how we factor it into planning and strategies. We look at how we're educating and raising awareness and working with the community, which again is why we're doing this 8th Climate Change Summit. So again, Lagos is very well ahead there. The area that tends to concern me the most, being the Office of the SDGs and Investment, is really how do we address those gaps in the infrastructure dependencies. And that's where indicator 13.4 speaks to how much is really raised, how much is committed to helping to address these challenges. And that really is the area that I tend to focus on. Now, as we mentioned, there are a lot of, and I think a lot has been said, what I like about the SDG framework is there's a role for everyone. In as much as we don't want to leave anyone behind, we also want everyone's action to count, because we need everyone's action to count. So there are roles for individuals, there are roles for businesses, there are roles for NGOs and civil society organizations, there are roles for governments at all levels, local, state, and national, there are roles for development partners, there are roles for everybody. And so for me, I think if I have to chronicle the things that need to happen, the first is the mindset shift. So I'm one of those people who's really been struggling with the shift from using plastic, single-use plastic, particularly water bottles, because I'm very particular about the water that I drink. But I'm very excited to be here today to see these beautiful carafes. I'm sure you'll notice this is a no plastic summit, and I think again the ministry must be commended for that. I personally know, and you heard the Commissioner for Women Affairs talk about championing using living plants instead of cut flowers. I love flowers as well, but this last year I had a living Christmas tree. So I had the tree, we decorated it, and now that Christmas is done, I put it outside. Next year, I'll bring it back in. There are little changes that we can all make, and I know the Ministry of Environment and the LASEPA, the agency, Environmental Protection Agency, have all been working on zero plastic environments, and one of the things I would charge them with, I've actually mentioned it to PS already, please chronicle these. Let us even spread it across the whole of the Lausa campus, and let's socialize it in the community. We should lead. We're already doing it, so let's amplify this and I'm sure a lot of businesses would be very happy to learn some of the things we've been able to do and take them up and implement that. So for me, that would be the first thing I would really love to see us do. And by the time we come back next year at the summit, everyone sort of changed their individual as well as their corporate behavior around our consumption choices. The second is our business choices. And one of the things we've been trying to advocate at the Office of SDGs and Investment is the fact that we will never achieve the goals and we will never address this climate change issue if all we commit towards it is CSR money. This is not a corporate social responsibility, feel-good, 2%, 3%, dedication of resources. This is a change, a mindset change, and a change in the way we do business and the things we consider business. And we have to look at that. We have to invest in new businesses. We have to divest from certain elements of our business. We have to look, for example, I've stopped using, again, this is more a personal choice, but the bamboo, for me, I'm really researching bamboo and trying to see how we can work with young people to see new industries we can create. I now use a bamboo toothbrush, bamboo comb, bamboo hairbrush. There's so many things we can make. We can make bamboo. Maybe Nigeria will be the first to innovate or to amplify the innovation of bamboo doors and windows. I hear that's a very expensive part of building components and is one of the reasons why we can't get our low-cost housing too low. But if we can pioneer that, bamboo is sustainable, we create something that is new or use all the sawdust that we have to create new products. So we have to look at a different way of doing business and make those choices that align with our ultimate objective of not all getting drowned by the ocean when the temperatures rise to above 1.5 degrees C. So we have to look at new ways of doing business. We also have to create jobs of the future, and I think particularly for women, we've talked about this as well. So we look at renewable energy. There are many things that women can learn to do. So we're seeing the rise of solar. Lagos is one of those areas where we're very, very big on that. We can train women to make solar panels and maintain solar panels and get into that engineering space in a technology that's easy to deploy, not so heavy to carry. Women can lift 1 or 2 or 3 panels. So there are many sorts of things. We can do smart agriculture. Mr. Governor did an innovation tour last week. I was privileged to be there. We listened to an energy company called Wana Energy and know of another one, Solstice. These 2 companies were started by young women who are playing in the energy space and trying to democratize that space, and we can support things like that. I've already talked about new sustainable building materials. So those are jobs of the future. We should look at the kinds of jobs we want to create, not just the kinds of jobs that are available today.
I know you can go on and on. And I had like 5 questions for you, but you seem to have answered them, especially the one that says that how does the challenge posed by climate change affect the achievement of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals?
I have one more.
Yeah, you have one more.
Thing, yeah.
Okay. Let me also read the second one so you can take it together. It says, are socio-economic development and climate change anti-ethical to each other, and how? So take them together. Thank you.
I see. Okay, so I was actually answering all the 5 questions. I did, yes. Okay, so I think I had sort of answered that a little bit as well in terms of, I believe there are opportunities in climate change, and when we address the issues that we have with climate change, we create better socioeconomic opportunities, like the one I talked about for women. So they are certainly not antithetical to one another. Indeed, by addressing the climate change issues, we will be achieving socioeconomic development. So do you want me to just continue?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Mrs. Sholakwe Hammond. If we allow her, she will go on and on until no one is left behind. Yes. Sustainable Development Goal and Investment. This is a wonderful session that we've had, and I want to appreciate you, the Honorable Commissioner for Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Wakpa woman. One wakpa. Huh?
I have one more thing I have to.
You don't want me to say thank you to you? That's
no, you will.
She has something to quickly say. All right.
I think it's very important to make this pitch. As I said, Lagos we put our money where our mouth is, and I'm not sure how many people have heard about the Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council. One of the innovation challenges we're doing this year is around circularity and climate change, and we are providing grants to people who are doing research in this space and innovation in this space. I just want to encourage everyone
grants. Did you hear that? In case you didn't hear, they're providing grants. Yeah. So those of us with various wonderful ideas, turning plastics into tiles, into tires, into t-shirts, please come up and I will introduce you to Mrs. Sholakwe Hammond.
No, they should go to lasric.lagostate.gov.ng.
lasric.lagostate.gov.ng. Lasric, LASRIC. That's it. Thank you, Professor, for a wonderful. It's nice to have you. You've been at all the 8 climate change summits. By the grace of God, you'll be alive and well to witness the next one. We also thank you, Dr. Michael Ahove, for your wonderful contribution to this session. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. We're going to have the remaining session in here. We don't want to lose you. So now let's take pictures and then bring the gift of our lovely Engineer Shodeinde, Professor Alod, Essay. Where is Honorable? Thank you so much. Honorable.